For more details regarding the information I am about to cite, please check the video description for a full list of links that I researched. And please stick around after the video to take a quick survey that I left in the description to tell me how much you charge for your comic book artwork. Thank you. Hello everybody and welcome to another creator-owned video. My name's Robbie. Today we're going to be talking about how much does it cost to make a comic book. This channel seeks to answer questions like this, like the basic fundamentals of comic book making, and cost of production is definitely one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind and one of the biggest boundaries for independent creators to overcome. The comic industry is different from something like the film industry, which has like standards for how you are to write a script, need to have an agent to solicit your work. Like there's a lot more like conventions to sort of hold this stuff in place. The comic book industry, because of its small size and scale, is a little more free to enter. Really, if you want to make a comic book, you just make a comic book. That sounds kind of, easier than it is. There are publishers like Image and Dark Horse that take submissions from independent creators. Who aren't like signed. But really, again, like that, I think a question on a lot of people's mind that I get pretty commonly is just like, well, if I have an idea, will anyone like invest in that idea? Because artwork's pretty expensive. And the answer is like 99.9% of the time, no. No one's just going to do that for you, unfortunately. There has to be some kind of proof of concept, right? And that's the same for the film industry, for the music industry. People go and record demos, people make short films, or, they make films on a micro budget, but they do something to show, yes, I have the ability to do this, and I've proven that I can do it, and like the time and the structure and the needs to get it done. Now we're going to move on to our next project, right? So if you're watching this, please be thinking about your first project and be thinking about something that like you can learn from, make mistakes on. And really your first project needs to be like an investment of your time to show that you could carry out something more ambitious, right? So let's go ahead and start, at square one. Artwork. That is where most of the cost, in creating a functional comic book comes from. The layers of a page of artwork, if you will, are the line art, inking, coloring, and lettering. These aspects can either be done all by individual contributors, which is common for something like the mainstream Marvel and DC model if you're working on a monthly cadence and pumping out books as quickly as possible. Or in today's market, it's pretty easy for people to do all of that contract because we have the technology to do it. And also because it gives them more work in an industry where it's, it can be difficult to find work. When we get into those components of a page of art, it varies how much people charge for that. And it really depends on the needs of the artist and the needs of the writer or, the artwork being commissioned. How much are you asking for? What is your intent? I did a survey to try and get an estimate of what is realistic to expect for a page rate in the comic book industry. I looked into people who have shared their, sage wisdom and knowledge as experienced artists, and I did distribute a survey asking people about their page rates. And the short version of it, again, is this all kind of comes at a range. I will leave links in the video to the sources I found, but you can sort of see, for instance, like a full page of artwork at the DC Marvel scale averaged like maybe $500 for all of its components. Findings were kind of consistent here for Indie, Image, and Boom, like $200 to $250 a page. And then there's like things such as just the low end of the boom average, or what I would say is getting into the truly indie territory. In the survey I constructed, I did, for instance, how much are you charging for pencils, inks, color, and like a full service page of artwork? I noticed that people were all over the ranges. I was getting response and, not a very well attended survey. I would love to do an update, but things like this, for example, like color, most people were answering towards the lower end. So I will revise that to have more options lower. Full service people were actually answering towards the higher end. So we'll take that in account. But even when I go into some of the communities that I surveyed, which again will be in the video description, I see really great, functional, like ready for retail artwork. I've seen people, some people charge $100, $150 a page. Some people charge $90 or $85 a page. I've seen really great artwork for $35 a page. And, a lot of those people are really making the prices low, not because they don't need the money, but because they want the experience. That kind of comes at its own cost because it can bring down like the expectations of the market, right? But I would say, if someone's charging 75 plus, you're probably going to start getting like comfortably pretty good artwork. And again, I not even like artwork I've worked with. I've seen artwork I would love to commission for like 85 a page, like less than 100. But let's just call $100 a page a pretty safe estimate all in for the sake of this video, because it comes beneath the indie average, like the Boom, Image, and Oni average of like, that was like 200-ish, right? I think 100 is like a safe estimate for quality work that, that you would feel good sharing and trying to take upward before you're into the domain of like published book that is going to be sold and like possibly make its return. It really depends on your needs and their needs, but like in my experience of what I've observed, I've commissioned pages for somewhere like $75 to $100, $125 a page for good, functional, I would feel comfortable presenting this comic book artwork. Now that we've established that one page of artwork in the indie industry is approximately $100 a page, let's talk about the layout of a book. If you're trying to do a floppy comic book like so, these can be as short as 22 pages in today's industry, 28 to 32 pages of artwork. Interior artwork is more average for today. So, basic math, we are talking about one issue of a book can cost you $2,800 to $3,200 for one issue. That's a lot of money. My first book that I did back in 2016 was a 22 pager, and for the artwork was like $1,700 plus for me, just for the artwork. And then by the time I printed it, I was over $3,000 in on one issue of the book, which was pretty difficult for someone who was like straight out of college and was like hoping to find my way. And again, it only goes up from there because if you are doing one issue is okay, that's a first step. 6 issues, a trade, if you will, is probably the bare minimum investment if you're going to want to submit to Image and Dark Horse and like have a book that could really be taken seriously, that like publishers might invest in you and you might, get out of the truly independent world we live in. I would say you want to plan for 6 issues, which means if you're paying approximately $3,000 per issue, you're looking at, a $19,000 to $20,000 investment on just interior artwork. Cover Cover art can be, an extra $150 a page. Like there's other stuff that you might have edits. So to do a trade, we're talking about a $20,000 investment. That's not an insignificant amount of money, right? You could get a down payment on a house. You could pay for a new car. You could, use that instead of going to college in some cases. So it's not exactly a cheap industry to get into, but something I stress in a lot of my videos is just like, you doing a comic book like this is an investment into your potential career as a comic book creator. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but you want to think of it as something that is going to take you further in the future, right? Thinking about it as something that's going to get returns immediately, probably not going to happen. But every comic book creator you are inspired by today got where they were because they did a book some way, somehow, on their own limited ability early in their career. And, not to lay it on thick, but once all of the artwork is done, there are other costs involved in putting your first book out into the world. There's printing the book, which can be just as expensive, like equally as expensive as the artwork process, depending on how far and wide you want it to go. The distribution of shipping the book around or to end users is very expensive. Marketing, just creating awareness for your book. So, once you have the book in hand, it's like, okay, great, I have it. But like, how do you make people know about it? That costs money too. In today's day and age, you've probably seen some of your favorite creators on Instagram or Facebook being like, wow, my posts are like not getting any traffic anymore. What's up with that? It's because Facebook wants you to pay for the privilege of people seeing your posts, right? They don't want you to create an audience for free. They want you to go into the ad account and pay money to get in front of more people. You're going to need money for that. All of that is necessary before you can turn a profit on the book. And most of us would just be lucky to break even and fund the next issue to get a little bit further, right? So these are topics I'd love to talk about at some other time, but I just want to give context that like doing the artwork is in some cases only the first step, right? So now that I dropped the bomb on everybody, the $20,000 bomb, what are some of your options, to make this more manageable? You're probably not going to go to doing your first 6-issue, $20,000 comic book right off the bat. I tried that once. It didn't work out because I didn't know the steps along the way. So like, obviously, you can do a book in black and white to save some cost per page, especially if you're talking about something that could be over 100 pages. Saving $35-ish a page would be great, but that's really just trimming and saving, right? And obviously, when you work with an artist, doing more of the aspects with them, like everything together, they can come down in price that way. But that's really, again, just saving $1 potentially compared to making this more manageable. My approach was, I decided to do things one issue at a time. And so when I was making my first book, Cooney, I did the first issue, crowdfunded it, got it into shops and stores, did the second issue. This took a lot more time, but it was more consistent in keeping like updates and progress regular. And, even if like that took you a few years to do the 6-issue book, at the end of it, you would have a collected trade. And I have seen other artists do it this way and succeed and get their work published. Check out my recent videos about kickstarting and crowdfunding because I refer to these examples there. And I think that this is a great way to sort of build, pacing and structure. And even before all that, before going as far as an issue, because even at, only $3,000 instead of 20, it is a significant investment. You can do smaller chunks of artwork. You can do short stories that you pitch to an anthology. There's lots of different anthologies out there that are put together by smaller creators who are, individually contributing to get to the bigger platform, right? So there are books that are like horror, noir, or crime collections or otherwise that, you have a similar audience, you get some experience, you might actually like build, some fandom by doing it this way. That is a lot more manageable. And even before all that, my recent videos about pitching just discuss the fact that like a 5 to 6 page pitch is sort of like the standard you need to submit to Image, Dark Horse, or otherwise. Just trying out a pitch first is like a great stepping stone, and it would also keep you, regimented to the short story format, which I think is nice. Or you can even tell stories in webtoons as even, 4-panel or 1-panel stories, right? But you can do that first to sort of build some portfolio and build some fandom before having to go all the way to the trade comic book. It's not an easy thing to do. Obviously, if you're an artist yourself, the only investment is time, right? And some people are that way and they do it. There are plenty of working comic creators today who, had to make a book on their limited artistic ability in order to become a writer and move up into the other pantheon. So I'm not going to name names, not to shade anyone, but if you look hard enough, you can find plenty of comic creators who knew like, okay, I'm not going to be able to just pull a down payment on a house out of nowhere. What can I do? I can make a comic book. And that's really like sometimes the amount of determination it takes. Those first projects probably aren't these creators' favorite works, but it was what was necessary to get them to where they are today. So yeah, guys, I hope I gave some helpful context with this video, even if all it is just like a general understanding of like the broad scope of what you are going to get into when you embark on making your first comic book. It's an expensive process. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. You're going to make mistakes. And that is like why I would advise you to do this in smaller, more manageable chunks and learn what to expect over time before you go the distance. So like, don't let that huge dollar amount scare you because you're probably not ready for that anyway. You want to do things in smaller portions. There was a point in my career where I was like, why don't I just do a couple of like 1-pagers just for practice? Those still cost me, like I said, $125 a page, right? Which you probably think like, who has that kind of money laying around? Well, come back to it later when you can, but like those are sort of the things you are going to be expected to overcome if you want to go the distance. I said it before too, a lot of creators find ways to work around this, whether you are doing a webtoon or, doing things one at a time. Some artists, some comic book creators just drew the thing themselves, even though they weren't passionate about artwork, but it was what was necessary. So like at the end of the day, this is an investment in your future. Treat it like that and, not as something that you need to make. You do not, just because you spent money on the book, you don't need to make that money back today. Take time to learn. I have a few other videos on the channel about other parts of the process, like writing your book, crowdfunding it, pitching it. I love the response to these videos. If there's something I haven't covered yet, please let me know what you'd like to check out. I'd love if you'd watch the other videos and just let me know what information you're looking for, right? I think this was a really valuable one because there was a lot of hard lessons I learned in here. But ultimately it made it, this process more approachable for me. And, I learned by failing, right? So, yeah, guys, before you're out of here, please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the videos. Leave a comment of what you'd like to see next, and we'll catch you all in the next video. Take care.